Welcome. I would like to welcome you to another episode of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And if you do me a favor, please subscribe to wherever you're listening. Please subscribe to wherever you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. So, with the regular season coming to a furious end in the NBA, there's been talks going on. And of course, those talks are award talks. Who's going to win the most improved? Who's going to win Defensive Player of the Year? Who's going to win Coach of the Year? And of course, the biggest regular season award there is the MVP. And you always hear, there's usually a constant 2 or 3 that you hear throughout the year. But towards the end of the season, they start throwing out different names. You start hearing. There's always a question about, who is the MVP, who should win the MVP. Should it be the highest scorer? Should it be the person that's maybe more important to their team? Should it be the most flashy person? There's always a conversation. And that's where we start today. First and foremost, shouts out to Giannis Antetokounmpo, becoming the all-time leading scorer in Bucs history, passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar the other night against Brooklyn. We know who Giannis is. We know how great Giannis is, and to do that in a fairly short career is incredible. So shouts out to Giannis for that. But like I said, there are questions with Giannis doing that, and with Giannis, finishing the season strong in Milwaukee. I think second right now in the East, or first or second. Questions are, you're hearing a lot of Giannis is this year's MVP. Giannis is this year's MVP. Now, if you think back to a couple months ago, while Giannis was in the MVP conversation, he was more third, fourth, fifth. You heard a lot of Joel Embiid. You heard a lot of Nikola Jokic when he was healthy, especially early in the season. You heard a lot of Steph Curry. You heard a lot of Kevin Durant before he got hurt. You just heard there was different names thrown, but the constant 3 that you pretty much heard was Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, and Giannis Antetokounmpo pretty much the entire year. So what I'm going to do today, because we still have not figured out how to properly figure out who is the MVP of the league. Every year, and I talked about this on my podcast a while ago. I talked about this on other people's podcasts. Shouts out to Janae Rochelle. I was on her podcast a while ago talking about this. We still have yet to figure out how to determine what an MVP is. So what I'm going to say something that may not be it's not that controversial, but I just feel it'll help us in the long run. There's a lot of people. What Giannis does is incredible. What people do in the league is incredible. What LeBron James is doing, averaging or being the highest scorer in the league at his age is we've never seen. There are some incredible performances that we've seen this year. I mean, shouts out to DeMar DeRozan. We just saw another 50-point game. I think March we saw the most 50-point games. I think there was like 10 or 11 or something like that. The league is at an all-time high when we talk about talent. I mean, hell, Sadiq Bey from the Pistons had a 50-point game. There are some talented people in the league. But what I think that we should do, I've said this before, but I think that it's time that we really need to implement this and reiterate this. I think there needs to be 2 trophies. There has to be 2 trophies. There has to be a best player in the league award and an MVP. And why do I say that? Because the best player in the league is not always the MVP, and the MVP is not always the best player in the league. Let's talk about that for a second. When we talk about let's stick with the best player in the league award. In my opinion, that's a very small list. I mean, Giannis is up there. Kevin Durant's up there. Of course, LeBron James is still up there. Steph Curry is up there. The best player in the league is who is the best player in the league. Now, you have You have players vote on it. You have media vote on it. You have coaches vote on it, kind of how we do the All-Star. But the best player in the league is not always the MVP, and vice versa. The MVP is not always the best player in the league. For example, you can argue that LeBron James is still the best player in the league. It's an argument at this point, but you can still argue it. He's 37 years old, averaging 31 points a game, while the Lakers are just god awful this year. He's put in multiple 50-point games. He became second in the league all time in scoring. You can have an argument that LeBron James is the best player in the league, but there's no way, in my opinion, that you can argue that LeBron James has been the MVP. Just look at, while yes, LeBron James has had an incredible year and had incredible stats, those stats have not trickulated down to the team. Now, that's not really his fault. It's just the team. He has not been able to carry the team. Because the Lakers are so bad, should that overtake and outshine or outshadow, I guess you can say, LeBron James' season? I don't think so. We're hearing a lot of people now throw Giannis' name in the book as he is the MVP. You know, he had, 3 straight 40-plus point games. Giannis is incredible. But a lot of people, when they say that, they fail to mention that, one, Milwaukee is the reigning champs, and they look better than ever. Wow, they got Serge Ibaka. The Milwaukee is probably, arguably, the most complete team in this league, and I think that helps Giannis do what he does. Now, Giannis is the only person that can do what he does, but having a team with Drew Holiday, having a team that has Chris Middleton, having a team that has Bobby Portis, and you know how to use him correctly, having a team that has Brook Lopez that came back, having a team that has Serge Ibaka, that helps Giannis be able to do what he does. Does that take away from the fact that he is incredible? And am I saying that because he's surrounded by all of those talented people? Does that mean that is that the only reason why he's great? No. Giannis has abilities that we have damn near never seen. He is the dominance that he ensues is like Shaq, however, more mobile. We know how crazy and how dominant Shaquille O'Neal was, especially in his prime days in his young days with Orlando, in the prime of his career in Los Angeles, and even while it wasn't in his prime, kind of the tail end of his career, when we talk about the Heat. Shaq brought a dominance to the league that we've never seen. We are seeing it right now in Giannis. Giannis has been more. This is gonna sound crazy. No, it's not. Physically, Giannis has been more dominant than LeBron James ever was. Physically. Now, I'm hearing a lot of people, hold on, chill out. The people that are starting to click in the comments, starting to send me things. I'm not saying that Giannis has been better than LeBron James. I'm not saying that at all. LeBron James is arguably the greatest player of all time. But when we talk about physical, LeBron James has done things, in his Cleveland days, in his Miami days. He's done things that we have never seen, and I don't think we will ever see again. But when we talk about sheer physical dominance, Giannis, in my opinion, is on a different level. Now, no, Giannis is not as good as LeBron James ever was, but Giannis is in that. There's a reason why Giannis has been playing for as short as he has, and he's on the top 75 team. There's a reason for that. So, going back to the point, when we talk about the best player, again, the best player isn't always the MVP. In my opinion, yes, Giannis has been great. Giannis has been incredible, but I just don't think he's been the MVP. Even though he's had an incredible run, I think he may finish third. But I don't think he's the MVP. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that he's one of the best, if not the best player in the league right now. Again, there's arguments for him. There's arguments for Kevin Durant. There's arguments for Steph Curry. There's arguments for LeBron James still. Let's go over to the MVP side, though. In my opinion, how you determine an MVP is simple. Who is the most valuable player for their team? Whose impact? Who has the biggest impact towards their team's winning success? Now, in this point, winning does have to factor in. That's why you hear a lot of analysts throwing Devin Booker's name. To me, Devin Booker should be in the MVP conversation, and Chris Paul. Now, Chris Paul kind of negated himself out of that because of the injury, but even with Chris Paul being out, Devin Booker has carried them with Chris Paul being out. But you can also look at the impact that Chris Paul has on this team ever since he got to Phoenix a couple years, 2 years ago, and it's been night and day. So Devin Booker should be in the MVP conversation. Is Devin Booker in the best players in the league conversation? No. But should he be in the MVP conversation? In my opinion, yes. John Morant. John Morant has, while I do think that if we're talking about the MVP, the one thing that hurts John Morant, honestly, is how good Memphis is. Because I think they're like 18-2 or 19-2 without him. But John Morant, a Memphis-led team is second in the NBA right now. You can talk about Luka. We know how bad they started off. That is Dallas. They started off. You trade Porzingis. I'm not saying it's all Porzingis, but Dallas did not start off good. Now Dallas is, I think, third in the West. I mean, you can throw in Jason Tatum. And how good, especially defensively, Boston has been the last stretch of the year, and how consistent Jason Tatum has been all year. Hell, if we talk about MVP, look at injuries kind of factor in. I know it's blasphemy to think, but injuries kind of factor in. Look at Steph Curry. Look at Golden State goes from arguably one of the best offenses in league history with Steph Curry on the court. With Steph Curry off the court, they are, I think, bottom. I think they're like the second worst in the NBA. That should show you. Now, of course, it's Steph Curry, but that should show you an MVP right there. Now, chill out for the people that are starting to type in the comments. I'm not saying that Steph Curry is this year's MVP. What I'm saying is, the MVP should be the person that has the most value to winning on their team, and ultimately, how does that winning affect the league? Giannis is up there, of course. I don't think that LeBron James should be up there because while he's had an incredible year statistic wise, that hasn't matriculated into winning. So in my opinion, Giannis has been incredible. And I'm not targeting him. The reason why I'm using him as a prime example because of how great he's been these last few games. Now it's been all season, but he's just been on another level this last like 3 or 4 games. I mean, again, had like 3 straight 40 plus point games, just past Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in scoring for the Bucs all time. So he's a perfect person to single out, I guess you could say. But Giannis has been incredible. But when we talk about best player and when we talk about MVP, there's a difference. There has to be a difference because while there are times where there is the best player in the league, it doesn't ultimately result in winning, i.e. LeBron James right now in the Lakers. And when we talk about MVP, there's a lot of players that should have consideration that won't, because they may not be the most flashy players. They may not be the most they may not be the most talked about players. They may not be in the most glamorous market. However, they're winning, or the impact on their team is felt more, which is why I think that they should be in the MVP conversation. But they won't be, because the MVP conversation is always crowded with a lot of the best players. So I just propose that there should be 2 awards. There should be the best player in the league award. There should be MVP award. That's just how I see it, man. That's how I see it. I still think, there's about 5 or 6 games left in the regular season. I haven't seen anything, in my opinion, to dethrone Nikola Jokic as the MVP, seeing when I'm talking about the longevity of the season and how consistent he's been all season. I just don't, especially with working with what he's working with. If you look at what Joel Embiid is working with, even before the James Harden trade, you had Seth Curry, you had Tobias Harris, who's a solid or okay third piece. You had Tyrese Maxey, who has been incredible this year. You've had some pieces. And then now, of course, you have James Harden, which we'll talk about in a second, but you had James Harden. That's not taken away from Joel Embiid, of course, but you've had more talent around you than Nikola Jokic has. Again, Nikola Jokic's 2 best players have been out all season, which is Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. And it's with Will Barton and other players. It's been like a carousel of who's going to be in the rotation. The one constant has been Nikola Jokic. So in my opinion, even though Giannis has been incredible, he hasn't done enough, in my opinion, to dethrone Nikola Jokic for winning the MVP this year. But if we were doing what I would say and have the best player in the league award, in my opinion, it's kind of hard for me to give it to anybody but Giannis. So at least right now, even though there could be an argument when you talk about LeBron James, when you talk about Kevin Durant, when you talk about when Steph Curry was healthy, but I would just give that to Giannis. So that's just how I see it, man. I think that there needs to be, because because it's so blended. They try to blend the best player in the league award. They try to blend They try to blend the best player in the league with the MVP, and to me, that does not work, because as we're seeing, especially this year, the best player in the league doesn't ultimately result in winning. And that the biggest case the one case that kind of solidifies that, especially this year, is LeBron James. LeBron James is about to be like one of the oldest, if not the oldest player in NBA history to lead the league in scoring. Yet and still, the Lakers are fighting for a playing spot, and that's where we're about to come. That's where we're going next. So the NBA playoff picture is coming up. Is wrapping up. Let me say that the NBA playoff picture, again, there's about 5 or 6 games left in the regular season, and you kind of get a sense of who's going to be at the top. You kind of get a sense of what your team is going to look like going in. So the question is, right now the Lakers are in the 11th spot, meaning they're outside of the playoffs. Now, there's no question that this has been a failed season for the Lakers. You bring on Russell Westbrook, you bring on Carmelo Anthony, you bring back players like Dwight Howard and key players that helped you obtain the title in 2020. And when you have a team that's led by LeBron James, that's led by LeBron James is led by Anthony Davis, who had an incredible run in 2020 for the championship. When you have Russell Westbrook, the triple double king, you expect better. You expect more than fighting for a playing spot. So the question, in my opinion, isn't will the Lakers turn it around? Hell, no. We've seen this even with Anthony Davis. I think that with Anthony Davis, they have a chance to not only win the play in. Actually, that's it. Because we've seen the Lakers with Anthony Davis, and they've looked incredible sometimes this year, and then they've looked god-awful most times, even with Anthony Davis. And even with Anthony Davis, I don't see that. Okay, so if they were to win the play-in tournament, that means they'll have to play the number one seed, which is what? Which is Phoenix, and I don't see them beating Phoenix at all. So, and a lot of people, and I just did it, but what a lot of people like to do is they talk about 2020 a lot. When we talk about championships, when we talk about the Lakers' recent success, they talk about 2020, just completely negating the fact that there is 2021, and the Lakers got bounced first round of the playoffs. Now, we did hear talk. Anthony Davis said that if he wasn't injured, they would have. If it wasn't for injuries, Anthony Davis getting injured, LeBron James kind of coming into the playoffs hobbled, it would have been different. I don't believe so, but yeah, I think the question, at least for the Lakers, is what's next. Because again, I don't see any way that they not only knock off. I could see them winning the play-in tournament. I just don't see them knocking off Phoenix. So the question is, what's next? LeBron James is a year older. To me, it's going to be incredibly hard to come up off of Russell Westbrook's contract, to come up off of not Anthony Davis, all these other contracts. The real question and the argument that's been going around these past few days is, should they look to trade Anthony Davis? And that's a complicated question with a complicated answer, because it depends on what you value. It honestly depends on what you value, man. If the best ability, of course, is availability. And you cannot depend on Anthony Davis when we talk about availability due to his injury history. Hell, he's injured right now. I think he's supposed to come back. I think he came back last night, but he is still injured. So he's built up the reputation of being a fragile player. No disrespect to him. That's just what's happened. So, if you value availability, which you should in the league, then you have to think about it. Especially a team that Anthony Davis is still young. Anthony Davis, when healthy, is still the top player in the league. You have to think about that. Now, then you have to then go back to what I just said. When healthy, Anthony Davis is still a top player in the league. You gave up pretty damn near your whole future for Anthony Davis because of the age and because of the the talent that he holds. Again, at best, when he is at his best, you can argue that Anthony Davis is a top 5 player in the league at his best. There was arguments going around at his best that who was better between Giannis and Anthony Davis. That's how good Anthony Davis can be. Hell, I will stand on a table. I will stand on my soapbox and say from here to until the end of days that the 2020 championship, the Finals MVP, in my opinion, should have went to Anthony Davis. Yes, LeBron was great. I think he finished the Finals with a triple-double, but that whole playoff run was like the coming out party for Anthony Davis. Nobody on the Heat could slow down, and that's also because Bam was hurt a lot of the time. But nobody on the Heat could slow down Anthony Davis. That's how good he was. So if you're looking at just talent, then no, you can't. And what you gave up for Anthony Davis, you can't trade him. That would be crazy. However, if you're looking at availability, you have to think about it because he's not always available. So But with the playoffs, let's kind of move forward. With the playoffs, like I said, you're seeing pretty much what you're going to get from these teams. And there's a lot of questions, but a lot of the questions are pretty much answers. You know what I'm saying? Like there's pretty much answers to a lot of these questions. Some answers people don't want to admit. Some answers are kind of clear as day. Like one question is there anybody, in my opinion, it's Milwaukee in the East and then a country mile. Now I understand the standings are close. You have Milwaukee, you have the Heat, you have Philly. Like the standings are very close. But when you look at the talent on the floor, and when you look at how teams play and how teams gel and chemistry and who is their best player, in my opinion, there's not a team in the East that can really contest with Milwaukee right now. You have arguably the best player in the league in Giannis. You have everyone playing incredible basketball around him, whether that's Chris Middleton, who is drastically underrated, whether that's Drew Holiday, who is drastically underrated. That getting Brook Lopez back was huge, and he's drastically underrated. To me, they're just playing the best basketball, at least in the East. They're playing the best basketball, and I don't see any team really close. I mean, the Heat are good, but the Heat are so inconsistent, especially when we talk about offensively. They just were on like a 5-game losing streak. Now I know they're on a 2 or 3 game winning streak at this point, but they just got off a 5-game losing or 4 or 5 game losing streak. And offensively, who is their best offensive player? Is it Kyle Lowry? It can't be Jimmy Butler because he's been inconsistent, especially when you look at the numbers this year. Is it Tyler Hero, who probably locked up the 6th Man of the Year award? Is it Bam? Like, you don't really know. Yes, it's a rugged team. It's a great defensive team, but when you have to lean on, especially today's NBA, when you have to lean on your offense, it's hard for me to trust the Miami Heat because I've seen what they look like this year, and it has not been consistent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. What about the Philadelphia 76ers? You have a player who could possibly win the MVP this year in Joel Embiid. You have James Harden, who is an incredible player, top 75 player of all time, clearly. But they have a problem with keeping leads. Hell, you just had the other day, they just lost to the Pistons, a team that they should definitely beat. And they're pretty, Doc Rivers was saying, no, this loss is on James Harden, which it was. James Harden has not been good. Now, I understand that James Harden, it's a new system, it's a new team. You're still trying to figure yourself out, figure out the rotations and everything. But, he has struggled, especially in fourth quarters. And it hasn't really just been with Philly. It was with Brooklyn as well. In fact, it was with this whole season. He's kind of struggled with fourth quarters. And I don't know how that's going to mature. We know James Harden has a propensity to kind of fade away in the playoffs in big moments. We've seen that throughout his career. So I don't know. When you put a great defender on him, like a Drew Holiday, what happens there? And of course, you have Joel Embiid, and I wouldn't put Giannis on him. But what are you going to put Tobias Harris on Giannis? No, thank you. So it's just hard for me to. That's a question that I think kind of has clear answers right now. Now, anything can happen in the playoffs. I mean, nobody expected Atlanta to make it as far as they did last year. But I just think that Milwaukee is the best team, and it's not really even close. Even if they don't finish with the number 1 seed, I think they're the best team in the East, in my opinion, because of how they're playing their best basketball at the right time. Giannis is playing his best basketball this year at the right time, and it's a complete team. To me, they're their most complete team by far in the East. So, another question is, and honestly, we have to be honest with ourselves. Another question that is kind of coming up with the playoffs approaching is how can Brooklyn really win this with a healthy Kevin Durant, with a healthy Kyrie Irving, maybe with a healthy Ben Simmons? I don't know about next year. Next year, maybe. But I think we can't put all our eggs in that Ben Simmons is coming back basket. I think that there was just a report saying he's revving up rehab. Yo, there's like 5 games left in the regular season. So you think that Ben Simmons, who just got traded to this team at the trade deadline, is going to make a drastic leap forward in 5 games? Now, I am shocked as most people, like, yo, why the hell has Ben Simmons not played this year? Like, why wasn't this injury that they're saying is so catastrophic about his back? Why was that not disclosed a long time ago? I don't know. So let's just talk about this year. Yes, Brooklyn, any given night, will probably have the 2 best scorers on the floor. Yes, Brooklyn probably has the best scorer in the NBA in Kevin Durant. Has one of the most unstoppable scorers in the league in Kevin Durant. Has one of the most unstoppable finishers in the league, especially around the rim, talking about below the rim, in Kyrie Irving. Has one of the most clutch shooters in NBA history in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Those are all facts. Those are all things that we know. Facts. But what a lot of people are doing is we're allowing the greatness of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to shadow or to blind us from everything else with Brooklyn. Everything else. And what do I mean by everything else? I was one of the people that stood on the table and said, yo, Brooklyn won this trade because they got exactly what they needed. They got a defender in Andre Drummond, who can also be a scoring presence in the paint. They have a 3-point shooter in Kyrie Irving. In Seth Curry. Now you have Seth Curry, Patty Mills, and Kyrie. You have Ben Simmons whenever he plays, but he hasn't played. So, and who's great defensively. But let's talk about what we're seeing right now. A, Ben Simmons ain't played yet. Don't look like he's playing this year. Okay. B, yes, you have Kevin Durant. Yes, you have Kyrie Irving, who have been incredible. Oh, and I didn't even talk about this last episode, but Kyrie Irving now, of course, is able to play home games. He's able to be a full-time player unless they go to Toronto, because Toronto still has the vaccine mandate for essential workers or whatever, so he wouldn't be able to play. But one of the biggest reasons why I didn't talk about that last episode, because I wanted to tie it into this very point. Kyrie Irving, and this is no disrespect to Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, we've seen Kyrie Irving be incredible. We saw him hit one of the biggest shots in finals history. We saw him put up some astronomical numbers. We've seen that. But Kyrie was putting up 50s and putting up 60s and going crazy when he was a part-time player, because he didn't have to he didn't have to play the next game. Like, he would have a game, be off a couple days, come back, just destroy Orlando for 60, be off a couple days, come back, put up 50, be off a couple days. You realize since Kyrie Irving's been to that full-time status, he hasn't been putting up. In fact, he's been struggling. Because it's different being a part-time player and being a full-time player. It's a different level of physicality. It's a different conditioning. It's just different. Now, am I saying that Kyrie Irving is dropped off the face of the earth. Offensively, no. We know how Kyrie Irving is going to be a future Hall of Famer solely because of his offense. But we're not getting the same. Now, that could change, of course, but for right now, we're not getting the same 50-point Kyrie that we've been getting because his body needs to adjust to being a full-time player again. Also, people allow especially offensively, how incredible KD is, how incredible Kyrie is. They've allowed that to blind them to the fact that Brooklyn is playing probably the worst defense I've seen this. Like, they are probably the worst defensive team, one of the worst defensive teams, because the Lakers are still garbage, especially defensively. But Brooklyn is one of the worst defensive teams that's going to make it into the playoffs. Hell, no offense to Giannis putting up 40 and stuff. Like, that's still a testament to how great he is. But Giannis wouldn't do that if Brooklyn played better defense. Brooklyn was going crazy. I mean, no. Milwaukee was going crazy on Brooklyn. Now, Brooklyn was up like 11 points, but Milwaukee ate that lead up quick. When you have Nick Claxton, he has incredible intangibles, but he's not fully there. And then you have Andre Drummond getting ran out. It's still shocking to me how drastically Blake Griffin has fallen off the map. I don't think Brooklyn can win it this year. And honestly, I don't know if they can win it next year because they're really banking. I need to see how Ben Simmons plays. But they're really banking on the incredible defensive play of Ben Simmons. Which, don't get me wrong, Ben Simmons did finish second in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year, but this team has a lot of holes. They have two really good hole plugs in Kevin Durant and Kyrie, but outside of that, they have too many holes for them to cover. That doesn't mean that Kevin Durant and Kyrie aren't great players. It doesn't mean they can't win you a series, but who are you picking? I understand, it'll be so great to see a 7-game series against Brooklyn and Milwaukee this year. Okay. One, I don't think that series would go to 7 games. 2, I think that Kevin Durant will be incredible. I think Kyrie Irving will be incredible. But, of course, I've said that this entire time because we know that. Where's that third? Because we know if Giannis doesn't play incredible, Chris Middleton can put a 40-bird on you quick. We know if Chris Middleton doesn't play well, Jrue Holiday can put up a double-double quick. And Jrue Holiday will sort of lock down your best player. There's a reason why Kyrie Irving any guard pretty much struggles with Jrue Holiday on him, because he's one of the most underrated defensive players the league has seen ever. Who is stopping Giannis? No offense to KD, but defense isn't his number one trait. There's a reason why. There's a reason why Giannis had 44 the other night, man. And quiet as is kept, when you have Kevin Durant having to play defense, he doesn't really get off offensively as much as we're accustomed to doing, which is why he only had 23 points against him. This has been a failed experiment in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, Kevin Durant, you leave Golden State. Kyrie Irving, you all, both of you guys come to Brooklyn expecting to just rule the East, expecting to be, giving Brooklyn a viable chance to win. The problem is, outside of those two, now you did bring in James Harden, that just didn't work. But outside of those two, they don't have much. They don't have much. They don't have a championship team. They have 2 championship players. They don't have a championship team. When you look at some of the great teams in recent memory that didn't have the most solid team, but they still Cleveland. when they had Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, and Kevin Love, they had complementary pieces. They had a J.R. Smith. They had a Channing Frye who gave him solid minutes from time to time. They had three players that can do three different things. Kyrie Irving solely score and dribble. LeBron James do a bit of everything. Kevin Love, you're our stretch big, and honestly, that team only won one championship, and I think that a lot of it was due to the collapse of Golden State. But even they still won. So all I'm saying is, you can have two great players. If you don't have a great team, as we've seen the entirety of the NBA, if you do not, you can have two great players, you can have three great players. Three great players is a lot different than two, though. But if you have two great players, but you don't have the team, you can look at the entirety of the NBA. They're not winning a championship. They do not have enough to win a championship. And honestly, even if you had Ben Simmons, which I think that definitely would drastically improve their chances, I just don't know. I don't think I would pick them over in Milwaukee. I'd have a hard time. I don't. I would have the only team I would have a hard time picking them over is Milwaukee. Honestly, I would have a hard time kind of picking them over Philly. Kind of. So all I'm just saying is, man, I just don't think Brooklyn has it, man. I just don't. And because of that, it's a failed experiment. I mean, to me, Steve Nash hasn't been good. He's just had the luxury of having two of the top scorers in NBA history. Like, he had three, honestly, and James Harden. That didn't work out. I don't know, man. And lastly, before we move on, a report came out saying that Steph Curry, who, of course, has a sprained ligament after Marcus Smart fell on his ankle. Steph Curry is pretty much been ruled out for the regular season, meaning that tests look good. They're trying to ramp up his rehab. They're trying to get him back by the beginning of the playoffs. Golden State is in a interesting predicament. They find themselves in a very interesting predicament. What Golden State's trying to do is they're trying to take NBA's worth of history and throw that out the window. And honestly, they have a real shot of doing it. What do I mean by that? When we talk, let's go back to Brooklyn for a second. What's one of the biggest question marks that we had with Brooklyn, especially last year? Chemistry and health. You put a collection of talent. You put Kevin Durant, you put Kyrie Irving, you put Blake Griffin, you put LaMarcus Aldridge, you put Paul Millsap, you put Patty Mills, you put all these. Patty Mills wasn't on the team, but you put Paul Millsap. You put all these players on one team. All these players that have been stars other places. Let's not disrespect LaMarcus Aldridge and Patty and Paul Millsap. They were monsters. When Paul Millsap was on Atlanta, and when LaMarcus Aldridge he was good in the Spurs, but definitely when he was on Portland. And Blake Griffin when he was on the Clippers. But one question that we always had was, do they have enough time to have chemistry? And will they be healthy going into the playoffs? Which turns out they weren't healthy going to the playoffs. Kyrie Irving twisted his ankle. James Harden had the hamstring thing. Bada bing, bada boom. Golden State has a lot of great pieces. A lot of really good pieces. You have Clay. You have Draymond Green. You have Jordan Poole. You have Andrew Wiggins. You have a really solid piece that a lot of people don't talk about for that team in Otto Porter. Kevon Looney. The problem is, though, Klay Thompson still is not back to the Klay that we saw due to the fact that he has missed 2 years due to lower leg injuries. And they're hoping for him to get back to the Klay. They need him to get back to the Klay, especially the Klay that's great defensively and the Klay that can go for 60 like it's nothing. They need that. They were hoping James Wiseman came back because he's a true big. Well, he's done for the season. Now, he's not. Some had a mishap in rehab, or they revamped him too fast, and now he's not. Now he's gone. Draymond Green had back injury. He's still trying to get back right because he's missed so much time. His defensive cues and the way that he's able to move on the floor, that has been drastically affected, and they're hoping to get that back. And, of course, the name that I didn't even mention yet, and that's Steph Curry, who will not be playing until the playoffs. Which, what does that do? You have a team that is used to playing with Steph, that's used to a team right now, because a lot of people talk about the championship DNA, which they have championship DNA because you have 4 players, because nobody really 5 players, because nobody really talks about Andre Iguodala and Kevon Looney, but they have 5 players that's won multiple championships. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, and Kevon Looney. Oh, and of course, Steve Kerr, the coach. Those players have championship DNA, of course. But you have one player, Steph Curry, who's not playing right now and hoping to get back before the beginning of the playoffs. And we know Steph Curry and his ankle injury history. Who knows? Klay Thompson, who has not looked like the Klay Thompson yet. They need him back. Draymond Green, who's also coming off an injury. Andre Iguodala, who's also coming off an injury. And Kevon Looney. So you're depending on players like Andrew Wiggins, who has not been in this situation. Jordan Poole, who has not been in this situation. Bielitsa, who has not been in this situation. Damian Lee, who hasn't really been in this. He's been called on for like 2 minutes, and then no. Now you're going to need. Golden State is entering into uncharted territories, and they know it. It's like, what happens when Steph Curry comes back? Hell, we saw Andrew Wiggins' game has not been the same, not only since All-Star break, but since Klay Thompson has been back, because the minutes change. Now, minutes change and responsibility change. Now, Andrew Wiggins, that was maybe getting 15, 16 shots a game, now gets 10. Jordan Poole struggled mightily once Klay Thompson came back, because he went from a starter to a bench player. And his production has increased recently, and it took a minute because he had to accept his time on the bench. And now Steph Curry's out. Now he's going crazy. But again, what happens when Steph Curry comes back? You have a player that has benefited greatly due to injury and Jordan Poole, seeing as though he's been a starter with Klay out and with Steph out. Now you have Steph coming back, and Klay's here, so he goes back to the bench. How is he going to be able to? Is he going to be able to be in that same mindset? Okay, let me change. Golden State has a lot of maybes and a lot of ifs. Now, we've seen Golden State at their best. At their best, I had them winning the championship this year. But due to injury, due to Klay Thompson not looking the way that he's looking, or the way that they thought he would look, due to not having James Wiseman, due to Draymond Green being hurt, and now due to Steph Curry being hurt, you're expecting them to throw away all the chemistry, because you're adding a lot of young players, Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, throw out the chemistry. Hell, I didn't even mention Moody. Throw out the health. You're expecting them to turn on a switch, which we've seen them do. We've seen them do that. You're expecting them to turn on a switch. One, We saw them do that with one of the greatest players of all time in Kevin Durant. And 2, they were completely healthy pretty much. And even if they weren't healthy, even if Steph Curry went out, you still had Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. Even if Kevin Durant was out, you still had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green before Klay's injury, before Draymond Green's back injury, and Steph Curry was healthy. You're expecting people like Jordan Poole, like Andrew Wiggins, like Steph Curry, who is coming off injury, like Klay Thompson, who isn't back to form yet, like Draymond Green, who's trying to get himself back to form. You're expecting them to flip the switch and go up against a Phoenix team who is probably the most complete team in the league and looks kind of like a clear-cut favorite, in my opinion, to win. Memphis team, who is playing above and beyond what I thought they would play, even without John Morant. A Dallas team who has emerged as one of the best defensive teams in the league, also with Luka. It seems like a tough. Now, a lot of people keep saying, a lot of analysts keep saying, which I agree, is just wait till they get healthy. But again, we're asking or expecting Golden State to do something that we haven't seen done in history. And if we have seen it done, it's because we're asking a team that is coming off injuries, that's coming off, that's having young players, and that's honestly coming off their worst stretch of basketball, to just flip the switch. And flip the switch with players that aren't fully there yet, like Klay Thompson, like a Draymond Green, and the players that's not there at all, and Steph Curry. We're asking them to flip a switch and be better than Phoenix, be better than Memphis, be better than Denver, be better than Dallas, and Lord forbid they make it to the playoffs. Make it to the finals. Be better than a Milwaukee, or be better than Philly, be better than Miami. I'm not saying it can't be done, because again, you have 3 Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, in Steph, Dre, and Klay. But when you look at the landscape of this team right now, it's hard for me to see them flip a switch. Do I think they can be competitive? Yeah. Do I think that they can beat Denver? Yes. But it's just, now that you're not a 2 or 3 seed, what happens? You know what I mean? Your road just gets that much harder. So instead of having to see Phoenix, if you're a 2 seed, maybe having to see Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals, now you drop down to a 4, 5, 6 seed, because I think in the last 7 games are 1-6. So you drop down to a 5, 6 seed. Now you have to play Phoenix round 2. Or you have to play Memphis round 2. So, it's been tough. But that's the playoffs rolling around. Again, once we get closer to the playoffs, of course, we'll once we get a clear, concise look of what the playoffs are going to look like, we'll talk about it more. But those are my thoughts. Let's move forward. Man, let's move over to basketball, man. Football, I'm sorry. Shouts out to Bruce Arians, man. Bruce Arians and the Bucs just do it right. Shouts out. So the biggest news was Bruce Arians stepped down as head coach of the Bucs and hands the job over to Todd Bowles, which then they negate his defense or his defensive coordinator position or defensive coordinator contract and give him a 5-year head coaching contract. I'm hearing a lot of reports saying that, or not of reports, there's a lot of rumors saying that one of the biggest reasons, or the biggest reason why Bruce Arians left was because of tiffs between Tom Brady, who retired and unretired, and I just don't believe that. I just think it was time. I just think he ain't want to do it no more. But the reason why I say shouts out to Bruce Arians, one who is an incredible coach, had an incredible coaching life. And of course he can always come back, but shouts out to just his career as an incredible coach. But one of the biggest stories this entire offseason has been the treatment of African Americans, especially in head coaching jobs, with the whole Brian Flores situation and the fact that there was only one black head coach for a while. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was the biggest story. And it's very clear to see. I mean, we talked about the Rooney Rule updates last episode, but there's clearly, when there has to be a Rooney Rule in the first place, there's clearly a problem. And clearly when the Rooney Rule hasn't been working, there's a problem. And the Bucs or Bruce Arians knew that. Bruce Arians knows how arbitrary the coaching interviews go, especially for African Americans. So it's like, let me just bypass all this. Let me just retire and just give it to Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles, who has been in head coaching conversations for years now, for the last couple years, and have yet to get anything. Let me just bypass all that. Todd Bowles is a great coach. Forget the whole interview process. Give it to Todd Bowles. Shouts out to Bruce Arians, because you don't see that a lot. You see, okay, Bruce Arians retires. Now we're going to have Todd Bowles or whatever as an interim head coach, and then we'll find somebody else. And usually that's somebody else or someone. Hell, look at the David Culley situation. I really respect Bruce. They've done it right, having pretty much an all-black staff. They've done it right, man. And shouts out to Bruce Arians. Shouts out to the Bucs. Shouts out to Todd Bowles. Black coaches usually do not have a good they usually are set up to fail. Hell, look at outside of Mike Tomlin, look at the black coaches in the league outside of Todd Bowles now. Lovie Smith is the coach of the Houston Texans. What do you expect the Houston Texans to do this year that they didn't do last year with David Culley? They don't have Deshaun Watson now. He's off the team. What do you expect Lovie Smith to do that David Culley didn't? They're set up to fail, man. And the fact that you look at, a lot of people were saying when Todd Bowles' name gets brought up when we talk about head coaches, a lot of people want to say, well, did you remember his last coaching stint? Bro, it was the Jets. How the hell you gonna succeed with the Jets? The Jets ain't been good since Mark Sanchez was running into his own lineman's butt. The Jets. They ain't been good since Rex Ryan. And you expect any coach, whether they're black, whether they're Bruce. Bill Belichick could not fix the Jets. You expect Todd Bowles to do that. Todd Bowles is an exceptional coach. And I love the fact that Bruce Arians said, we're not doing the whole interview process. We're not doing none of that. I'm stepping down, give it to Todd Bowles. And they gave him a 5-year extension. And honestly, I don't think that Tom Brady's gonna see the end of that 5-year extension. So they're giving him an opportunity. I respect that, man. I respect that. And this also helps with Brian Leftwich. Because one of the biggest arguments and one of the biggest reasons why Brian Leftwich maybe didn't get some of the coaching jobs that were available was because people were questioning, okay, are you the one calling the plays or is it Bruce Arians? Now, I do think that's BS. Hold up. I need to get his name right. I need to get his name right because it's Mike McDaniel. The same questions that Brian Leftwich was facing, Mike McDaniels was facing. So I still think it's BS, but it's true. They were saying, okay, you have Bruce Arians. is Brian Leftwich the one calling these plays, or is it Bruce Arians? Now that Bruce Arians is gone, and you have Todd Bowles, who is a defensive-minded coach, now Brian Leftwich is pretty much like, hey, now it's time for me to showcase. I do think it's BS, though, and I'm not saying it's right, but that's what it was. It is BS because the same questions was with Mike McDaniel and the 49ers, because isn't it Kyle Shanahan the offense? Isn't Kyle Shanahan the one calling the plays, even though Mike McDaniel's got the job for Miami, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying this helps Brian Leftwich showcase the fact that, no, this is my offense. Let me show you what I can do. So, oh man, this is just yet another win for the Bucs, man. And you don't see this happen a lot. Again, you don't, and that's why I really appreciate it, man. You don't see this happen, especially for black coaches. You see this happen all the time. Let me say this. Let me change. You see this happen all the time. A head coach steps down and promotes somebody else. Somebody else gets promoted. You very rarely see it be with a black person, though. And that black person actually gets an opportunity to showcase what they do with a 5-year deal. Hell, he doesn't have to win a championship in 5 years. But I put money the Bucs are going to look great in 5 years. Even with Tom Brady not being there, there's a lot of good players on that team. Well, there's a lot of free agents, but still. I respect it, man. So shouts out to Bruce Arians walking out, letting go of the head coaching reins. Shouts out to Todd Bowles. Shouts out to Brian Leftwich. Shouts out to the whole Bucs organization, man, for getting it right. So let's move forward. We talked about Bruce Arians and we talked about transitioning, and there's been a lot of transitions this offseason. Probably the most we've seen in a while. Now, yes, there's still big players, and there's still great players that are still on the market. I mean, you still have Odell Beckham Jr., you still have Jarvis Landry, you still have Jadeveon Clowney, you still have Tyrann Mathieu. There's still really good players that's going to get, going to another team. And I'm not negating that. But I'm just talking about so far the top 10 moves that we've seen so far. Now, I'm also not including people coming back. Like I'm not. Tom Brady unretiring is not on this list. Aaron Rodgers going back to Green Bay is not on this list. I'm talking about transactions. I'm talking about either players getting traded, a free agent picking another place. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm giving my top 10. I'm gonna go with number 10. Amari Cooper to the Cleveland Browns. To me, this move is bigger for Dallas than it is for Cleveland. If you want to know how important, now for some reason, Dallas has wrapped their arms around Michael Gallup, and I guess they feel like he's the most important cog, especially in that wide receiver market or wide receiver room outside of CeeDee Lamb. I would contest, if you want to see how good and how valuable Amari Cooper was, look at Dak's numbers before Amari Cooper and after Amari Cooper. I just think that's going to be a huge blow. Now, there has been a lot of players. When we talk about Amari Cooper, when we talk about C.J. Wilson, when we talk about Randy Gregory, when we talk about Lonnell Collins, like, there is a lot of players that are not with Dallas anymore that are big parts of Dallas's success. And I think that Amari Cooper leaving was pretty much the beginning of that. I guess you can call it a snowball effect. So I have that for number, and that's going to be huge for the Browns. We don't know what's going to happen with Jarvis. I mean, they did release Jarvis Landry, but you're hearing they might come back. But outside of that, Amari Cooper is the number one receiver for a team. Now I think the biggest problem with Amari Cooper is there are times when he just disappears in games. Like, there's times when he looks incredible and looks like one of the best wide receivers in the game. Then there's times when you're like, oh, Amari Cooper's been here this whole time. Look, what? And he's just perfectly fine with it. So I do think that Amari Cooper going to the Browns is a bigger effect for the Cowboys than it is for the Browns, but I have that at number 10. Number 9, I have Bobby Wagner and Allen Robinson to the Rams. when you trade Robert Woods, he does get hurt last year, but you trade him and you lose Von Miller. And replace that with Allen Robinson and Bobby Wagner. Like, I do now. Bobby Wagner is not the Bobby Wagner of Legion of Boom days. Clearly, that's been a while ago. But Bobby Wagner is still a very good player. And to lose Von Miller and to get Bobby Wagner and to get him, you're not asking Bobby Wagner to be the Bobby Wagner of the Legion of Boom. You're kind of asking Bobby Wagner to do what Von Miller did, and that's be clutch in big situations. Be clutch in the playoffs. Like, that's what you're asking him for, and I think that he can do that. So, and when you lose, we don't know what's going on with Odell Beckham Jr., but you get Allen Robinson. And a lot of people forget how good, or a lot of people don't understand how good Allen Robinson is, because he's been playing for a franchise that hasn't got the quarterback right in a while in Chicago. You pair him with Allen Robinson is a number one receiver. Let's not get that confused. Again, a lot of people have a cleared or a cloudy image of Allen Robinson because of the mess that he's been playing with in Chicago. But Allen Robinson is the number one receiver. So you pair him with now Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, and maybe Odell Beckham Jr. You know, that was huge, especially losing what you lost to get what you got for the Rams. That's big. Number 8, I have Carson Wentz to Washington. I don't like the pick. I mean, I don't like the move as a Washington fan, but I will say that trying to put my, I'm trying to be as understanding as possible, but he was the best that you were going to get. You weren't going to get, Washington wasn't going to get Patrick Mahomes. They weren't going to get Russell Wilson, clearly. They weren't going to get Aaron Rodgers. He was the best. He was the best on the market. I do think that he is a step up from Taylor Heineke. I'm sorry. And Carson Wentz has his moments. Now, do I think that Washington's a championship team with Carson Wentz? No. Do I think that Washington can win the NFC East with Carson Wentz? I do. Because of a lot of the pieces that Dallas has lost. And a lot, you still have Terry McLaurin. You have Curtis Samuel. Hopefully he gets a full season. You have Antonio Gibson. You have some pieces. And, of course, we know about the incredible defense they had. They did lose Landon Collins, but Landon Collins hasn't really been a positive for Washington for a while. So I do think that Washington has an opportunity to win the division. I just don't think that they're a championship team. But I do think that it was huge getting Carson Wentz, because it kind of, again, they needed he's better than Taylor Heineke. I will say that. And he is the best quarterback that was available. I mean, if you look, he's better than Marcus Mariota. I don't know if he's better than Baker Mayfield, but we did know about the Deshaun Watson situation. I think that due to the surgery, he's better than Jimmy G. So maybe Matt Ryan, though, but I don't think Matt Ryan, with the whole trade clause, I don't think Matt Ryan would have went to Washington. So I have Carson Wentz number 8, or Carson Wentz going to Washington at number 8. Number 7, I have Von Miller at Buffalo. They got Von Miller solely for the playoffs. They saw what Von Miller did and how he electrified that, alongside, of course, Aaron Donald, electrified that Rams defense, especially in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Buffalo had an incredible defense last year. The only thing that they struggled with is big stops at big moments, i.e., the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, which is why they changed the whole overtime rule. You bring on a player like Von Miller. Now, I do think they possibly they overpaid for him, but you're getting him for his presence. You're getting him for his player. I mean, he's a two-time Super Bowl champion, one-time Finals or Super Bowl MVP. So I just think that was huge. They improved on an area that they needed to improve, and that area was big stops and big plays. Now you have a player that can get to a Lamar Jackson, that can get to a Joe Burrow, that can get to a Patrick Mahomes for a sack in big moments. That's how big Von Miller is, or that's how important Von Miller is, I think. And, of course, he brings championship DNA to a team that doesn't have it. So I have Von Miller to the Buffalo Bills at 7. Add Matt Ryan to the Colts at 6. Do I think that this this makes the Colts a Super Bowl champion contender, no. But I do think that a lot of people sleep on, or a lot of people view Matt Ryan in a way that they kind of view Carson Wentz in the sense of they don't have it anymore. Matt Ryan is not, and I said this when the trade happened, Matt Ryan is not good enough to elevate a poor roster. What Matt Ryan is good at, though, is to have a really good roster and take them far. Now, far, I don't know how far is. That's to be determined. But I do think that he's still good enough to have everything good around him and go far. And I think that the Colts, I mean, you give up Carson Wentz and you get Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan, even though it didn't amount to a lot of winning, he still had a solid statistical season last year. So I think that he's going to be good for the Colts. I honestly do. So I have Matt Ryan to the Colts at number 6. Number 5, I have J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack to the Chargers. I think the Chargers I think with this move, the Chargers' biggest problem last year was kind of like the Buffalo Bills. Big stops at big moments. You bring in arguably the best safety in the league, and you bring in a Khalil Mack, who, while Khalil Mack is not, I think that we still have questions about Khalil Mack as far as, is he not the Khalil Mack that he used to be due to injury, or are we just seeing a Khalil Mack that played for Chicago that had no direction? I just think this is huge. You're asking a team that their biggest struggle was defense, and you have 2 premier players going to the team, kind of like with the Bobby Wagner, Allen Robinson situation. The difference is, to me, the Chargers are better than the Chargers have the opportunity to be better than the Rams. Or let me say this: the players that they got in their current years in the league are better. J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack, in my opinion, are better at this point in time than Bobby Wagner and Allen Robinson. Do I think that there was a time when Bobby Wagner was better than both? Of course. Do I think that Allen Robinson was great? Yes. But I just think that you're getting J.C. Jackson in his prime, and we still need to see about Khalil Mack, but we know how good Khalil Mack is. And we still have questions on the head coach and, clock management, time and play calls. But you get J.C. Jackson, you get Khalil Mack, you re-sign Mike Williams. I just think that the sky is the roof, or the ceiling is the roof for the Chargers. So I have that at number 5. Number 4, I have Deshaun Watson to the Browns. Now, honestly, this could be 1 or 2. The only thing is, I just don't think Deshaun Watson will play a lot next season due to the civil suits, and I'm sure he's going to be suspended. We don't know how long. It could be 6 games. It could be 10. Who knows? And there's 22 civil suits, by the way. If we talk about the sheer player, Deshaun Watson at his best is a top 5 player in the league, and you go to the Browns. Now you need to figure out what happened with Baker Mayfield, but I just think that you get the premier player. Now we can have a long, in-depth conversation, which we've had before, but we can do that about, did the league care about the women? We can do that, and yeah, but we're just talking about on-paper football moves, and Deshaun Watson going to the Browns, especially when you have a great offensive line, when you have a really good defense. We need to see about Jadeveon Clowney, but it's looking like it's kind of leaning towards him re-signing with Myles Garrett. Oh, and you get Amari Cooper. Again, the only reason why I have this at 4th is because you don't know how much he's going to play the first year, and that is Deshaun Watson. So I have that at number 4. Number 3, I have Tyree Kale to Miami. To me, this is huge on a lot of fronts, man. This is huge let's just speak on Miami side. Now you have arguably 2 of the fastest players in the league in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and you really have no excuse if you're Tua. If you're a Tua, like Tua has to ball out. Do I say you have to win a championship? No, but you have to. You have to at least make the playoffs. You have Gesicki, you have Waddle, you have Tyreek Hill. This makes their offense. So Tua, you can't, if you're Tyreek Hill, you can't expect to have those 60-yard bombs, those 50-yard bombs that you're used to with Patrick Mahomes, because Tua is not that type of player. But the excuses are pretty much over with for Tua, as far as you have the weapons now. You have the weapons. So and on the Chiefs side, this is a huge loss. You still have Patrick Mahomes. You still have Tyree. I mean, you still have Travis Kelce, but you're losing a premier wide receiver. And now while you do get Juju Smith-Schuster, you do get Valdez Scantling. You do not have that deep threat like Tyreek Hill anymore. Valdez Scantling can kind of be that, but he's not Tyreek Hill. Let's get that out your head now. So it's a big loss. It's a huge loss. I do think that both teams will feel the impact. I think that the Miami Dolphins will feel the impact of Tyreek Hill. It's just mostly on Tua. Like, how is Tua going to be able to adjust? And I do think that the Kansas City Chiefs will feel the impact of not having Tyreek Hill, not having that deep threat safety net that they've had. Now, I do think that the Chiefs can overcome that because you have Patrick Mahomes, and he's still the best quarterback in the league, in my opinion. But I do think that was a huge move. That definitely changed the dynamic of the Chiefs a little bit. Again, Juju Smith-Schuster and MSV is not Tyreek Hill, like, combined. So, but you still have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So, but I do think it's still huge. Number 2, I have Devontae Adams to Vegas. This kind of the same thing as Tyreek Hill. This affects both teams drastically. When we talk about the Green Bay Packers, if you look at the Green Bay Packers wide receiver core, I mean, Devontae Adams is arguably the best wide receiver in the league. And he was Aaron Rodgers' number 1, 2, 3, and 4th option. We saw that in the playoff game against the 49ers. If it wasn't Devontae Adams, he wasn't passing the ball. That's just how it was. I mean, you tried to pass it to Mercedes Lewis. It didn't work. He's not doing, like, Devontae Adams was a huge part. You're losing arguably the best wide receiver in the game. Well, yes, you have Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers can get the ball to anybody. It's different from getting the ball to Allen Lazard and getting the ball to Devontae Adams. It's just different. And if you look at the wide receiver room for Green Bay, you lose VSG, you lose MSV, you lose Devontae Adams. You don't know what's going to happen with Robert Tonyan. It's tough. And for Vegas, all we've heard is if Derek Carr had a number 1 receiver, well, you got it. You got your best friend, because they both went to Fresno State together. The excuses, kind of like for Tua, the excuses for Derek Carr is kind of over with. I mean, now you have Devontae Adams. Now you have Darren Waller, who is arguably he's top 3 tight ends in the league. You have Hunter Renfrow, who's a deep threat and kind of like a gadget guy. You have Josh Jacobs, an incredible running back. I do think they need to focus, especially in the draft, need to focus on do they even have draft picks? Or try to focus on the offensive line, because Leatherwood ain't it, like everyone said, even at the draft. But yeah, Devontae Adams, this is such a shift for both Green Bay and for Vegas. This puts Vegas solely in, or this makes Vegas definitely competitive in the AFC West race, because I mean, you still have Patrick Mahomes. Now you see what the Chargers are doing. You have to be competitive. You have to be competitive. So I just think that this puts them solely in the race. And number 1, I have Russell Wilson at Denver. That shouldn't even be a question. All we've heard is, Aaron Rodgers can go to Denver. If Aaron Rodgers goes to Denver, that's the best place for him. That's the best place for him because he has all these weapons. You have Aaron Rodgers. You put Aaron Rodgers on Denver, they're automatic Super Bowl champion. Well, they didn't get Aaron Rodgers. You know who they got, though? They got Russell Wilson, while, yes, he didn't have the greatest campaign last year due to the fact that he was hurt, and everyone, like the offensive line around him, was god awful. I went to Seattle when they played Washington Monday Night Football. I went to that game. I was working that game. I was on the sideline. I was on Seattle's sideline working camera for Monday Night Football. That offensive line is god awful. It was horrible. Like I saw that, I knew it was bad. We knew that his offensive line was bad, but I didn't know how bad. And their defense was not good either. Washington won that game actually, and they had no business winning that game. It was bad. So you go from that to a Denver team that has Judy, that has Sutton, that has Williams at the running back position, that has a really good and an offensive head coach. Like if you have any questions and you still question like how impactful Russell Wilson to Denver is, look at Seattle right now. That's all I gotta say about that. Those are my top 10, man. Who is someone that I left out? Who do you think who is do you like my list? Let's talk. What do you think about this NFL offseason, especially with the trades and free agency signings? Who do you think is going to be the next big free agent? Like, I wonder where Tyrann Mathieu is going to go. I wonder where Odell Beckham's going to go. And it's also funny how I hear all these free agents and stuff, and I don't hear anyone going to Green Bay. Anyone. So, but yeah, man, that's my list. Let me know how you feel. Let's move forward. Team USA was breaking news the other day. They got drawn. You know, they're in the World Cup. They missed last time because they just aren't that good. But they made it to the World Cup. Or let me say this: they made it to the qualifiers, and they have been drawn into Group B. Now, Group B, it consists of England, Iran, and the winners of like UK, Wales, and like somebody else. I forgot the other team, but that's pretty favorable. Their biggest competition is, of course, England in that group, and I think if they win, they're gonna have to beat the second place team in Group D, which is like France, Denmark. Yeah, man, I think they have a pretty favorable match. But again, you never know with Team USA men's. I mean, it's interesting. They didn't. I mean, if you look, they better be lucky they didn't get Group C, which is Argentina, Mexico, Poland, Saudi Arabia, or Group E. Jesus, Germany, Spain, hell, or Group G. Good Lord. Group G, Brazil, Switzerland. So, yeah, man. They got themselves a favorable group. Group B, England, Iran, all teams their biggest competition is probably England and maybe Wales, because they got to go against Garth Brooks or something. This name is definitely not Garth Brooks. The Garth dude, I got his name. But yeah, man. Shouts out to Team USA. Hopefully they do something. I don't expect them to, because Team USA is never that good. Even though Christian Pulisic is arguably like a lot of people are saying he's like the greatest player we've ever had since like Landon Donovan, and he's probably better than Landon Donovan, and he's young. So that's interesting. And he's been great. Like he's been incredible. He's played like the best. But you know, just interested to see. So, and before we go, shouts out to Aliyah Boston for winning Naismith Women's Player of the Year. Now I'm recording this actually during the women's Final Four, so I don't have any updates for you. I'll talk about it on one. Damn. Next time we talk, there'll be the national championship. We'll talk about it. But yeah, so I don't have an update because I'm doing this during the Final Four. But shouts out to Aliyah Boston for winning Naismith Women's Player of the Year. She averaged 17 points a game and 12 rebounds. She was incredibly dominant. And also, shouts out to Oscar Shingway for winning AP Player of the Year. He averaged 17 points a game, 15 rebounds. Now, like I said, this is before we go. The Naismith Player of the Year and the AP Player of the Year is not the Wooden Award winners. Now, to me, it kind of goes back to the MVP conversation that we talked about the beginning with, the NBA, the beginning of the show. So there's I think the Wooden Awards is like April 8th, I believe. And To me, there's two completely different contrasts when we talk about the men's Wooden Award finalist and the women's. Now, when you look at the women, you have players like Shakira Austin, who was incredible for Ole Miss. You have Aliyah Boston. You have Caitlyn Clark. You have Nas Hillman from Michigan, who was great. All these players were great. You have Haley Jones. You have Angel Reese. Shouts out to Maryland. You have Nalaja Smith. All great players. However, they're kind of zeroing in on two players: Aliyah Boston and Caitlyn Clark. And if you go over to the men's Wooden Awards, you have, of course, Oscar Tshiebwe. You have Drew Timme from Gonzaga. Ochai Agbaji from Kansas. Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. And Keegan Murray from Iowa. They're kind of zeroing in on Oscar Tshiebwe and Ochai Agbaji. Let's just speak on the women's first. Let's speak on Aliyah Boston and Caitlyn Clark. To me, it kind of goes back to and shouts out to Tykera Carter. She came on the episode. She came on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and we talked about we kind of touched on the fact that Caitlyn Clark and Aliyah Boston have both had incredible seasons. The difference is Caitlyn Clark, Aliyah Boston has been doing how am I going to say this? For Clay, it's kind of like the flashy pick or the best pick, in my opinion. And that's kind of the same. It's kind of drastically different, but sort of the same way for the men's side. You have the flashy pick for the men's, Oscar Tshiebwe, who was incredible. Like I said, he averaged 17.4 points a game and 12 rebounds. He was a monster for Kentucky. But and Kentucky, I mean, he was their best player, obviously. But then you have Ochai Agbaji, who wasn't the most flashy, yet he is, I'm not going to say the sole reason, but he's the biggest reason why Kansas is now playing in the Final Four. And while he didn't have the most flashy numbers, he had 19 points a game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists a game. But his impact was felt more, in my opinion, than Oscar was for his team, for the Kansas Jayhawks. He, as far as Ochai Agbaji, was the calming storm, and he wasn't the most flashy like Oscar was, and Oscar was incredible, especially if we talk about defensively. He averaged almost how many? I think he averaged 3 or 4 blocks too. He's been incredible. But I still think Oscar is probably going to win the Wooden Award. But I would question, he's been great, don't get me wrong, but has he had the same amount of impact that Ochai Agbaji has for Kansas? Because Kansas right now he has been by far the best player for Kansas. Yeah, they have McCormick, but he has been by far the best player for Kansas, and they're playing in the Final Four. Same thing as Caitlyn Clark and Aliyah Boston. Aliyah Boston has been incredible all year. She's been consistent all year. She's had one of the most dominant performances we have seen ever in college basketball or women's college basketball. That is what Aliyah Boston is doing, and she's been so consistent this entire year. And while Caitlyn Clark has been crazy, has what she's done really impacted winning as much as what Aliyah Boston's done. So in my opinion, I would give the Wooden Award to Aliyah Boston, and I'd give it, even though Oscar Tshiebwe has had incredible season, I would give it to Ochai Agbaji. That's just me. So, it's just me. But there you have it. that's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve, joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Whatever color you're feeling, I got you. Whatever design you're feeling, I got you. Just click on the link below. Click your whatever design you want. Click whatever color you want. Check out. Boom, is going to you. I appreciate you guys. Also, please subscribe to wherever you're listening. Please subscribe to wherever you're watching. I'm trying to get the algorithms going, man. I'm trying to get more people to experience the Unpopular Podcast, and I can't do that without you guys' help. If you can, comment, like, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. The only way that I can get more engagement is for you guys' help. So if you can, hell, on DSPs, rate it. It would definitely mean a lot to me. I hope you guys have an incredible weekend, and until next time, much love.